Okay, so I, this paper is on the incidence and transmission of COVID in U.S. childcare centers after COVID-19 vaccines. So they mean, but after COVID-19 vaccines became available, not necessarily if the children are vaccinated or not. So I saw the study being cited a lot in newspapers, saying like, oh, you don't have to worry about, or like, children are not a source of COVID transmission, which is just blatantly not true. Children are one of the major vectors. Children in healthcare centers, so this could be like nursing homes, but most largely the hospitals themselves are the largest vectors of places where you can catch COVID, followed by things like grocery stores and other public events that you go to, like concerts or things like that. Drink some water. Been talking a lot today. Sorry about that. So I wanted to do a deep dive into this paper. It made me a little angry. I like read through the abstract, so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna finally go through this whole paper. The importance: COVID surveillance studies in U.S. child centers, CCCs, child care centers, in post-COVID-19 vaccine era are needed to provide information on incidence and transmission in this setting. The objective is to characterize COVID incidence and transmission in children attending child care centers, so students and their child care providers, CCPs, and household contacts. So this would be the teachers, my donut, the children themselves, and then their parents is what it's looking at. So it included 11 child care centers in 2 cities. They did weekly reverse transcription polymerase chain reactions, so they did weekly PCRs. Swabs, they kept symptom diaries and optional baseline end of study serologic testing. So the main outcome measure, so the exposure was COVID infection in child care students, COVID incidence and secondary rates of attack and transmission patterns were determined from diary entries and self-reports to CCC directors. So that's how they're telling if they had a COVID infection, is from these diary entries and the self-reports, which I'm like, I don't like that. And then the study's very small, so it has 1,154 students and 402 childcare practitioners who self-reported cases, so there's big issues with self-reporting, because not everyone will admit, like, oh yeah, this happened. Or they like won't know it, or they could be asymptomatic. There's lots of issues with self-reporting. So 83 students, So yeah, so you have this large number, and then all of a sudden 83 students participated in weekly active surveillance, so it's slimmed down. There are 154 student cases and 87 child care, so the teachers. I'm just going to say teachers for CCP, and then the child care centers, that one's easy to remember, CCC. As defined by positive PCR or home antigen results. So like there is that, but like it was weekly, so every 7 days. So that means that in some cases that wouldn't show up on the rapid antigen test. It might show up in the PCR, but it might not show up in the rapid antigen testing. It could be completely through the window by then, because children in particular, they seem to have a shorter duration of symptoms. On average, it seems like about 3 to 6 days, which would be under that range of 7 days. But in this study, only 154 students, 87 child care practitioners. I did remember at that time, the teachers had a COVID positive test. And again, it's not a controlled setting. It's not just people going to school, not going to school. Like, there could be transmission from parents. There could be transmission from the teachers going out and having friends and lives. So it's not controlled. That's why this has major issues with it. And right here it said that students were more likely than child care practitioners, the teachers, to have asymptomatic infection. So children, not only are they infectious, they're more likely to have an asymptomatic presentation, and they are, from what we've seen in the literature, they have a shorter duration of illness. That doesn't mean it's not bad, it just means that the illness duration is shorter. I've seen 3 to 6 days is about that duration. In adults, it's about 8 to 12 days. And then, like, it's weird, like, they pooled it, so they said household cumulative incidence was 21%, with no significant difference in incidence rate ratios between adults and children. That tells me that both adults and both children are vectors. Like, if there's no difference in children going home and infecting their parents, and adults going home and infecting their, like, adult spouses or children, then both are equally transmissible to their family members. And then the household secondary attack rates were 50% for children and 67% for adults. So that tells me, yes, children are vectors of transmission. So, like, from all of that, what I just told you, what I'm reading from their results, when they have their main findings suggesting that child care centers play a small role in COVID transmission into their households, and that current testing and exclusion requirements should be aligned with those for other respiratory viruses, that's a finding that is completely contrary to what the results show. That's part of what made me so mad about this. Sorry, let me scroll it up a little bit. Because when you're not having any difference between children and adults being infectious, and children have a 50% rate of attack, secondary attack, then that's means they can transmit to their family members and bring it home and get them sick. And we know this from all the anecdotal evidence of people being like, oh my god, my children brought home COVID and now I have COVID. It's so logical too, right? Of course, children in large groups are transmitting viruses. Yes! That's the whole thing. Like, it's, like, you can't even, like, logically be like, oh, children just don't transmit viruses. Children, it doesn't matter if they get COVID. They're not going to be infected bad. No, this is all BS and lies. So, like, that's the reason this one is going to be one of those paper examples where I'm breaking it down and showing you how bad the paper is. Because, like, right here from their conclusion, from their result, their own results, I'm not citing any other paper, I'm looking at their results, and it does not support their outcome. It does not support their conclusion. I'm convinced that the reason why they don't want to do anything is because they would have to admit it. Yeah, that's part of it. Like, I mean, this is just me being me and speculating, but, like, I don't know a lot about governments, I don't know a lot about politics, but I have seen that, like, if you watch the White House briefings, they don't want to admit when they make mistakes, because, of course, they can never make a mistake. They always have to be right no matter what happens and what their policies are and what their actions are. They were always right. They never admit fault. So, like, if they all of a sudden are like, children can pass COVID and can cause infections, and they're actually, like, one of the highest vectors of COVID transmission in our communities, that's going to go against everything that they've been saying since 2021 or 2020, when because, like, Rochelle Walensky, her big thing when she became CDC director is Biden made her push all the children back into school. And I, like, stated this, and I will say it again and again and again, that will be the biggest historical downfall of the Biden administration in terms of COVID policy. I mean, there's the foreign affairs stuff. There's my cat, it's Kitty. But, like, for COVID policy, that's going to be the biggest downfall and the biggest negative connotation with his administration. And Rochelle Walensky's career is going to be the push of children back into a pandemic, an ongoing pandemic, and how it's going to be mass disabling them, how it's going to be not sterilizing them, but reducing fertility by a dramatic amount in these future adults. It's absolutely mind-boggling, and yeah, I agree. Like, they don't want to go back and admit like, oh, we made mistakes. Like, there's still time to correct these things and to try to protect people and protect, in this case, like the children. But they don't want to admit that they screwed up, and it's so frustrating. I get tonsil stones, and I was pulling one out, and I accidentally used my little pick too far, and I poked my throat, and my throat hurts. And they hurt the children. The individual parents have this guilt too. Yeah, but like, what can the parents do? The parents can't like sit around for a week, 2 weeks off of work at home. Like if they so let's just paint a broad scenario. So let's say you have a family with 3 children, and one of them gets COVID, and then the other 2 get COVID, and it happens within a span of like 6-7 days. So you're doing really good, but then all of a sudden, like, you find that the children are playing with each other, and you're like, God dang it! And then they give the other ones COVID. So now you have 2 weeks of your kids having COVID, and you're taking care of them and having to do all that stuff. You can't go off of work. You can't take 2 weeks off of work to take care of your sick kids, especially if you're low income. Like, who's going to be taking care of these children that are sick? And, like, you just have to end up sending them to school. There's no other option. And, like, it sucks. It puts parents between a rock and a hard place. It would have required coordinated pushback. Yeah, it would have required coordinated pushback, but also, like, recognizing at the high levels, like, these are the things that happen. Children can get COVID. Children have gotten COVID. Children have gotten long COVID. Lots of children get long COVID. It's actually a very scary, surprising number. It's like 33% of children with COVID infections end up with some form of long COVID. And then of those with long COVID, 50% of them develop neurological sequelae. I need to look how to say this word. I always say it wrong. Sequela, or whatever. Sequulae. And 50% of them get neurological issues. And those are developing brains that you're damaging from a COVID infection. And who knows what the long-term impacts of that is. Sequelae. Sequelae. Okay, thank you, that sounds right. It's one of those words that I always struggle with. Sequelae. Let's do the Google pronunciation. I always, say this word wrong. It's one of those words that I have read a million times. I know what it means.
Sequela.
Sequela. Okay. American versus British pronunciation, I think. Yeah, probably.
Sequela.
Okay, I think I'm good. So, that's the singular. Okay. But, yeah, so, like, it's just a big issue, and we're essentially going to be tearing this paper apart, because it has many, many flaws, and a lot of people are pushing it to be like, this is proof that children aren't contagious, they can't catch COVID in the classrooms, and now we're going to absolutely demolish their paper. But first, let's go through their little key points here in the right-hand column. So their question is, what's this COVID cumulative incidence and transmission rates with child care centers and between child care centers and households? Their findings is that in a study cohort of 83 children in 11 child care centers. So first, let's take a pause there. So we're going to highlight this red because it's bad. Save. Sorry, I haven't saved it yet, so we have to do a quick aside. I don't like losing my information. So, 83 children in 11 child care centers. Donut's back. So that means that you have inter-variable confluence, I guess would be the way to say it. So essentially, In a study, when you're trying to control for something like this, you would want to have, if you're having a small number like 83 children, you would want to have them all contained within the same school population, because that would make it that would make it so that you're eliminating other variables such as like the air quality and the HVAC system in the school, how close the desks are, the amount of like person-to-person interaction, how much playtime they get, things like that. If they have stricter policies for people being sick with COVID and having to go home, all these types of things are going to be different from school to school to school, childcare center to childcare center to childcare center, and the fact that you have 11 different ones and 83 children, so like you're going to have different populations of the children in each of these different childcare settings, so that means that you're having all these extra variables in play. So it'll be interesting if they actually do a breakdown somewhere, because I will absolutely demolish them for this. That's the singular, pronounced sequela. Sequela. Like a 16th century Italian monk speaking Latin. It's funny. Donna is very interested in us destroying this paper. Hi. So the cumulative incidence was 16%, and the secondary rate of attacks was 2.7 to 3%, is what they're saying. With the upper range representing possible but not definite secondary cases, compared with 50 to 67% among household child and adult contacts, respectively. Of 30 household contacts, only 5 were secondarily acquired from 3 students infected in childcare centers. So again, how are you proving that the children are directly causing the infection of the parents? How are you proving that the children are directly causing the infection of the other children? That's the hard thing with respiratory illnesses, or even like fomite contact, is where the origin source is. It's difficult. So their conclusions and relevance in this study: the SARS-CoV-2 incidence of transmission in childcare centers and student households transmission within childcare centers and from children infected at childcare centers into households was low. Findings suggest that the current testing and exclusion recommendations for COVID in childcare centers should be aligned for those with other respiratory viruses with similar morbidity and greater transmission to households. Okay. It's a bunch of garbage. So, introduction. Children younger than 5 years comprised a high proportion of COVID cases in the U.S. in late 2021 and early 2022, then earlier in the pandemic. So yes, that is true. As the pandemic has gone on, children seem to be getting impacted by COVID more and more in terms of getting infected with it, passing it on. In the beginning, it seemed like it was mostly the mid-age adults to older adults, but again, this could have just been people weren't monitoring children as closely, or weren't aware of the symptoms, the signs, to even test the children. Testing wasn't as available early on, so there's a lot of things that can influence that. It's acknowledging that children in group childcare can transmit infectious diseases. I'm concerned that even if you prove that schools are transmitting, the parents can't face it. Yeah, I guess it's more... so right now I'm just trying to show that this paper has significant limitations and significant issues. So we can't, so when people are trying to leverage this work right here to be like, children can't transmit to each other, it's completely fine. Hi, Miss Kitty. I'm just trying to disprove that, because it's been very established that children get COVID, children transmit COVID, children bring COVID home. And, but yes, fair enough, I'm in my feelings. No, you're fine. I completely agree. A lot of parents can't face it. There's lots of policies and laws in certain places that actually allow parents to opt children out of mask wearing, even if the school has a mask mandate policy. Um, a lot of parents are just in denial and can't even admit that COVID exists. It's real. It's severe. It's something that they want to avoid for whatever reason. And then like, how do you? And then there's that side of it. Then there's the other side of it where it's like, okay, so I'm a parent. I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm sending my children to school. How do you get like? If I don't have a child, but if I was sending my child to school because like I have to, like they need to get educated, and they're getting COVID and getting sick with COVID, like there's gonna be this internalized guilt of like I did that to my child, but like it's hard because like everyone takes on an individual approach. It's a systemic problem and a systemic issue, and it's like we don't have a good solution. We don't have a good alternative. Um, but yeah, parents are 100% going to feel guilt for that, no matter how aware of COVID they are, how good they are at like addressing the current challenges. It's a hard situation to be in. Yes, those new laws being passed banning mask mandates are so dangerous. It needs to be taken out of their hands. This is why we have experts in laws and public health. Yes, I completely agree. It's very dangerous. And Atlanta, I just did a video earlier today, but Atlanta is pushing, they're floating a full mask ban. So the only exception would be for people with medical conditions, but like for everyone that's doing masking as a preventative measure, it would likely not apply to them. And they're painting it under the guise of reducing crime, quote unquote, in Atlanta. So let's see. Evan, I told a friend sending kid to kindergarten to mask, and she said no one else is. My heart sank. Yeah. And kids can mask. Like, it's not a hard thing. You literally, like, kids will emulate your behaviors. If you wash your hands, your kids will wash your hands. If you brush your teeth, your kids will brush your teeth. If you mask, they'll mask. And what about sourcing N95s and just dropping them in schools and hospitals like leaflets? Yeah, and the other big issue is that we have the money. We're not distributing the money. States have billions and billions of dollars of unspent pandemic relief that they're now using as slush funds. I did another video on that not too long ago. Biden allowed them to use it for basically anything now. But that could have been money that was allocated to providing quality masks to public schools. And that's something that's not being done. But anyways, so back to the paper. So right now they're acknowledging that the CDC and local health departments have included closures of classrooms or entire child care centers, and mandatory testing, and extending exclusion and quarantine periods to limit potential spread. So that's clearly, they're saying this as something that they don't like, the authors. And then they're saying a comprehensive understanding of the actual risk of COVID transmission is vital for policymakers to implement appropriate, proportionate mitigation measures in the event of a surge or the emergence of new variants. And then they did a 12-month surveillance study. So that's absolutely crazy. They only had 83 people sick with COVID over a year. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. These must have been like tiny schools. So it was conducted from April 22nd, 2021 to March 31st, 2022 in 11 child care centers, including 5 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Ann Arbor, Michigan. So that's another thing. So not only are these different schools of these 83 children in 11 different child care centers, they're across different states. You have Michigan, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. So that's going to be different policies, different populations of children, all these extra variables that they're not controlling for. And then my sister's sending my niece and nephew, and my parents are supporting it. Little childcare centers are often in residential homes. I didn't know that. Or inside bigger schools and churches. I know about that. 4 centers were university affiliated, and 7 were private. So you have different socioeconomic statuses as well. So that's going to be another variable impacting the study. And by that, I'm saying the private schools. Private schools are typically very expensive, so that would be a higher socioeconomic status. And then throughout the study, COVID vaccines were available for adults, but not for children younger than 5. I'm also interested, they haven't mentioned yet how old these children are. In November 21st, 5-year-old children. So this is a good timeline thing for me. Alright. COVID-19 vaccines became available for 5-year-old children. So under 12s is what we typically say, to receive the COVID vaccine. So that's absolutely wild. Only 83 students in, 3 different states: Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Michigan. Or inside bigger schools and churches, yeah. And again, like, these are, like, we need to get to the methods section, but, like, they were saying that it was diary entries and reported, like, symptoms from self-reporting, that's how they, like, knew, but somehow there's also PCR and rapid testing. I don't know if this is people seeking them out or if it was part of the study. It's very unclear so far. Okay, here we go. So eligible students were younger than 6, attended the child care center for 2 or more full days per week, and had 2 or more additional household members. Eligible child care providers at the child care center for a minimum of 2 days per week, and had 15 or more minutes of close contact with children per day. So that's a very, very, I'm going to flag that as a bad. Because 15 minutes is like nothing a day. Household adults and children were eligible if they spent more than 2 nights per week in the residence of the child attending the child care center. They excluded non-English speaking individuals, parents younger than 18, or non-biological parents. So these are some weird exclusion criteria. I mean, I kind of understand the younger than 18 parents, but the non-English speaking ones and then the non-biological parents, so adoptive parents, that's kind of weird. The self-report group was not enrolled. However, we obtained de-identified weekly director reports of COVID-19 cases at child care centers. Okay, weird. Okay, so once they have COVID, they're just testing for when they become negative. So within the whole population, their surveillance population broke down to 83 students and 21 child care providers. We're going to circle that. These are the real numbers. So they have numbers at the beginning, but these ones are right here. So there's only 83 students, 21 child care providers, 118 adult household contacts, and 16 child household contacts. So, like, these are incredibly small numbers of people. So, like, Sorry, I actually should. So, how are you getting relevant, like, in a relevant risk assessment when, so essentially, if we assume that these child household contacts are one child per family, then that's 16 out of the 83 students. Or exclude. Yeah, that is a red flag, excluding non-English speaking parents, which is really, really odd. That and the fact that they were excluding foster parents. That's weird. I don't understand why that would be an exclusion criteria. Sorry, my cat's bugging me. But like, this is their study population that they're making these huge claims for, saying that there's no risk of child contact, of secondary transmission rates. So like, they have 118 adult family members, 16 child family members, and they're 83 students that were infected with COVID. That's it, and then 21 teachers. So like, these numbers are very, very tiny. I'll look up the table later if they have some interesting stuff in the text. Or maybe it looks like they don't, so let's go to the table in a second. But positive data we got a split sentence. For all students and childcare professionals with COVID-19, directors provided symptom onset, positive test date, exclusion date, rooms visited by the infected individuals while contagious, and the number of exposed child care professionals and student contacts in these rooms. After each case report, the study team monitored director reports for potential secondary cases and map transmission and correctionality using prescribed case definitions and case logs. We determined the site's CCC household or other, child care center household or other, of infection, distinguished between index and secondary cases, and noted the few indeterminate cases. Surveillance participants provided demographic information, blah, 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 blah. Alright, let's look at that table. So we have the 11 different child care centers. They did not break these down by the different states and by the different care centers. So that would have been very important stuff to break down in this table that they did not do. So that's another strike against them, because it sort of obfuscates the fact that these are not all within the same state or even in the same county. You're pooling from these different populations of people. And these for people under 6. Children aged 0 to 5. So again, like, if you have children that's young, like infants, why can I not get the color? How much are they really going to be interacting with one another? You really need like kids that can move around to fully assess this. So that would be probably like 2 to 5 is what they should have done. So this is just a breakdown of the overview. It didn't tell any of the results. Is there a different table? I'm just gonna scroll real quick. Here we go. This is confusing. 24 parentheses 10, is this standard deviation? What are we doing in the parentheses? They don't have... incidence rate per 10,000 persons per day. Okay, so that's not relevant. So the percentage is in the parentheses. There we go. In symptomatic. So 4 people, 2 people, 20 people, 4 people, 6 people. These are very, very low numbers. Like, if I went from 4 to 5, that would jump me up to, like, 24% or something like that. I think young age is important because not wearing respirators being a possibility of mitigation. Yeah, and that's another thing, is like, are these children wearing masks? Is that something that is happening at these facilities? Are these maskless facilities they did not mention? The baby's breathing still fits shared spaces. Yeah, it still fits shared spaces, but it's not going to... The way particulates of COVID would be generated from all these different infants in a room that aren't really interacting with one another, that are pretty much just like rolling around in a confined space. They wouldn't be exhaling hard enough, far enough, fast enough for it to really like spread far. And also the adult, like the childcare practitioners, their cutoff is 15 minutes of contact time. It's not a lot of contact time. My assumption with 0-5, yeah, my assumption too is no masking at all, but I don't know, because they didn't say it, and that's like another thing. Like, the study is not well done. It's not well written, it's not well executed, it's very small numbers. And then they're not like breaking this up like they should between the different states, and then the different childcare centers within the states, and then like what the location is of these can we group some of those together because they're really close together? We don't know. They didn't like do that. Kids or adults, I disagree about the time issue. This was Omicron times, right? I don't know what you mean by time issue. But this was 2021 to 2022, which is 15 minutes. 15 minutes for what? So the 15 infection, 15 minutes maybe? That's for adults. The 15 minutes was based off of adult respiration rates and velocities. If we're just talking about children in the same room together, not being supervised, then they wouldn't necessarily... We just don't have data on that. Or at least I haven't seen data on that. Zoom, 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 zoom. Going back up. We did that. Definitions. Exposure contact was defined as being within 6 feet of an individual with COVID for at least 15 minutes. Very general. Infectious period was the 2 days preceding and 10 days after the first symptom onset. On the positive day, considered day 0. Blah, blah, blah. They're confirming... So, okay, that's good. They're confirming COVID positive result with defined as any positive real-time PCR from surveillance swabs. Oh, yeah, so they're doing... Okay, so they are doing the 7-day spot testing for PCR, but... Did I miss it? When are... Like, how often are they doing... Like, which populate... like, it seems like these PCR tests are weekly. It's hard to tell because I didn't, like, actually write this out. But, like, it seems like the PCR tests are weekly following a confirmed COVID positive. So, like, once they test positive, 7 days, weekly at a time, once every 7 days, weekly at a time, they do a PCR test, is my understanding. I'm not seeing anything that's explicitly stating. Oh, there it is. Nasal collection processing, so we can look there. Let me just double check his plan of time. Transmission of 15 aerosolized virus. That's why we're so afraid of FN1. I think they are waiting for someone to say I'm sick. They weren't routinely testing, but waiting for someone to self-identify. Yes, and that's my impression too, that they're waiting for someone to self-identify. But I think we're going to get that right here in this bottom section. It's weird how they ordered this. Usually you would have this much higher. But yeah, let's not skip too far ahead. So if a cluster, the indexed case was the first person with day 0 criteria, so approved by 1 or more days. A secondary case was an individual with COVID whose onset of symptoms or positive result was 1 or more days after exposure to another individual during an infectious period. That's fine. And I don't know why they're doing the total population, because their quote-unquote total population would be like... I'll have to look back at that table below before I say anything, but I think it's... they're doing the entire study total population from what I recall looking at it being like, that's weird, when it should just be the total population of your group. Nasal swab collecting processing. Surveillance participants self-collected and submitted interior nasal swabs weekly. So is this weekly for the 12 months? Are they, like, I have so many questions. Are they being trained on how to use these properly? Are they doing it the entire duration of the study? Are they doing it when they get sick, and then from there on until they're not sick? They weren't routinely testing. Yeah, that's my impression, but like, it's so hard when studies don't like actually write out what they actually did. Okay, so they're looking at antibodies, COVID antibodies, and their voluntary serology program. But I didn't remember them seeing anything on that. Maybe it'll be in the results section. I like the table view, so I'm not going to highlight the breakdown of people. And then I guess just for reference for anyone that's popping in, this is the table view, where this is their actual study breakdown, where you have 83 students that were looked at, you have 21 these are ones that got COVID. This is the surveillance population. So yeah, 83 students got COVID, 21 teachers got COVID, and then they're monitoring the adult and household contacts of these students. That's the breakdown. So these people are vaccinated, 95% of them, 20, 90. So that's funny. 20 is 95%. And then 92% of the parents were vaccinated. I'm not sure what they're defining at vaccination, if it's 1, 2, or 3, since that would be like the amount of vaccines that would be available in that window. Yeah, yep, you're right. So it's once they get sick, they're doing swab submission rates weekly, I guess until clearance, within 48 hours. Is my understanding of the reading here. I'm gonna run. Keep up the great work. Thanks for stopping by. I enjoyed chatting with you. So there are 154 student cases and 87 child care practitioner cases defined by COVID rapid antigen test. Then why did it get dropped down to 83 and 21? The Child Care Center incidence rates paralleled Ann Arbor and Pittsburgh and national surges of the dominant COVID over the time. The highest incidence occurred just after their holiday break during the Omicron wave. Incidence varied significantly among centers. Which is what we mentioned earlier. It's going to be different in different places based off of different rules, different crowding, etc., etc. Incidence varied significantly among centers, ranging from 7%, 6 out of 88. 6 out of 88 child care practitioners and students, so they're lumping them together. They're not even differentiating it, so they can get a higher number. And then 26 out of 98 child care professionals and students. That's the range. It's going from 7 to 27%. And then among all surveillance participants, 50 of 238 had positive test results for COVID during the study. The overall cumulative incidence was 16%, including 2 self-reported students with 2 cases each. So 271, does that break us down? Where's my calculator? There it is. 83, 21, 118, 18, and 16. 238. That is not 271, so what's happening? Further down. Household cumulative incidence was 21%, and the incidence rates were not significantly different between household adult and child contacts, meaning that both children and adults can spread to their families. What? Only 60 specimens were COVID positive? I'm gonna run. That would make the findings even stronger if they aren't capturing even asymptomatic cases. Yeah, definitely. Um, that would make the findings even stronger if they aren't capturing asymptomatic cases. Yeah, yeah. Hi Patrick, are you on Twitch? No, I do not have a Twitch. Oh, this is here. What's here? The little chat thing? This is just the live center of TikTok. So one of the cool things I can do, yeah, I can add comment boxes, chat boxes. I've got my little video feed set up, which has my cat Donut right there. And then I can easily like zoom in on the paper, so I can like walk through it a lot easier. I've been meaning to do something like this for a while, but like I figured this is, you know, sometimes you get pushed into doing new things, and I've leveled up. But yeah, we're breaking down this terrible paper. Yeah, no problem. It's fancy for it. Yeah, this is definitely fancy for TikTok. They said it was a new feature. I tried some of their other stuff. Like, you can do, like, viewer ranking. I tried, there's, like, a link feature, but the link didn't work. Like, it showed the link, but it didn't, like, it wasn't clickable. I can do, like, the display capture, the image. Is there any other interesting things I can do? I haven't played too far into it yet, but, this is the stuff I liked when I was doing a little, mess around session with people. So symptoms, only 60 specimens were COVID positive. So I feel like that's going to invalidate that they had even more above, because that means that they're putting a lot of weight to self-reported COVID cases when they're not necessarily actually COVID cases. So it could be something like flu or RSV. If only 60 total of all adult household contacts, all child household contacts were COVID positive. Or, sorry, never mind, I'm all caught up. So that is, I was thinking about this completely wrong. So 60 specimens of the household contacts were COVID positive. And of that, 24% were adults, 17% were children. Okay, that makes more sense. You can also click the square box to switch from vertical to horizontal. Okay, let me try that. Square. Whoop. Appearance. Nope. From vertical to horizontal. Bring forward, set backward, pin, center. Oh, okay, my bad. On your phone. Oh, yeah. I gotcha. Yes, if you change it to landscape mode, it should be easier, and you can even, people are telling me that it's really nice, you can zoom in if you want to, like, read certain, like, lines of text. So, like, that's another cool thing now. So yeah, sorry. So I wasn't reading this properly for the symptoms phase. It's weird because they were going from, like, this to this. But yeah, so 60 specimens were COVID positive of these contacts. Yeah, this is something we mentioned earlier, is like when you're not controlling for variables, how do you know if a person caught COVID within the child care center or outside of the child care center? How do you know if the adult contacts got it from the child, if they got it from from someone at work? How do you know if the adult didn't give the child the initial infection, and then, like, there's a lot of stuff they just did not control for in this study. So it's the ultimate thing is this is a very weak study. You can, like, pull some stuff out of it, but the fact that the transmission rate is similar between adults and children, I think that's the number one thing to pull from this study, is that children and adults can infect each other with COVID. Yeah, we knew that, and that's something that is apparent from your study. There's no statistical significant difference between the two. So, like, what this tells me, so they're saying the overall secondary attack rate in child community centers was between 2.7% and 3%. The self-report student rate rose to 8.2% in sensitivity analysis, but was much higher in households, 50% for children and 67% for adults. So this is telling us that once you have that, once your kid's sick with COVID, and they catch it in the child care center, they're very likely to bring it home to you. That's what that's telling you. And then they're saying that people with asymptomatic infection, 3 out of 51, transmitted the virus. So this, their tracking appears that, like, 6% of students with asymptomatic infections can transmit it to other students. Which, yes, we know that asymptomatic transmission is possible. I just don't like how they're reporting the data. Interesting. So 5 of 30 household cases were caused by 3 symptomatic students infected at child care community centers. So yeah, that's telling you that once kids get sick, they're going to spread it around. Yeah, no worries. And then 12 to 16 student infections were acquired outside of the child care center. 10 were secondary cases of parents or siblings with infection in the household who did not go to the child care center. And so when you whittle down their actual numbers, 9 of 46%, so 20% of infections that occurred in households were the result of student attendance at the child community center. So that's what they were directly able to pinpoint it down to, and that's a lot. That's very significant if you scale that up to big numbers. So it's all this is telling us is that yes, children are COVID vectors. Their conclusion is so wrong based on what they're showing us. It's just humorously wrong. It's so bad. Ugh. Yeah, so this was, for people that were asking earlier, this was Delta and Omicron variants, yellow. This is way, way back, many variants ago. Need some water. She's a good girl. Okay, so essentially, it's a bunch of bullshit. What they're doing is extrapolating big conclusions from a paucity of evidence. That just means not a lot of evidence. And from these very small numbers, they're saying that children attending child care centers did not significantly contribute to COVID admissions within the child care centers or to their household members. So they should be excluded from testing, current testing requirements. So yeah, that's this paper. So I think it's good to have torn it apart just because, like, I literally saw this paper about a week or two ago. It was in, like, news article after news article after news article after news article saying, oh, children don't cause, like, children don't, aren't an important factor in transmission. In child care centers, they won't get sick. And then it's literally like, 50% of children that get infected in a child care center will give it to their adult parents and siblings, or like adult parents, and then like 21% of this pooled will give it to like their household members. which is pretty significant, and they're saying that it's not a significant difference between adult transmission and child transmission, so they're equally transmissive, apparently, according to the study, or at least they're not, we can't say it's equivalent, but we can say that it's not statistically significantly different. So yeah, that's why I wanted to go through this one. I always don't like these papers because they make me very angry. But I think it's good to like show people like, yeah, this article is making a lot of big bold claims that it does not have the footing to make, and then not only is it doing that, the article is saying the article is like making conclusions that are outside of what it actually shows. Cool. So that's all for now. I'm gonna log off. I might do one more paper later today, but I'll post both of these. Well, I already posted the other one, but I'll post this one on my YouTube. So thank you all for swinging by, and if I have the energy, I'll do one more paper like this later today. Bye, everyone. Yeah, no problem. Bye.